Welcome back, everybody. It's Brenda here, your host of the X podcast. And today I have on Adela Hussain. Hey, Adela, how are you doing today?
Hello, Brenda. I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
Absolutely. So we're on opposite sides of the world. I'm on the west coast of Canada. You're in Copenhagen, Denmark. So I'm
Yes.
early morning. You're almost wrapping up your day. And for those of you that are not familiar with Adela, Adela is a disruptive publicist, and she's here to help you pitch your business ideas, your business frameworks, models in front of like the right editors, publicists, podcast guests, anyone out there to really get your message out in the world. Adela, can you tell us a little bit more about your business and how you got into this?
Yeah, great question. It's interesting in terms of how I got into this business. I used to be a management consultant, so I know there's lots of former corporate execs listening
Yes.
today. And so I was a woman working in a very male-dominated environment as a big sort of mergers and acquisitions consultant. And for about 17 years, I was doing that work and realized that every day I had to constantly get visible against, very loud men. And so when I kind of left that world and became an entrepreneur, the first business I had was a fashion tech business. From day one of that business, I had to get extremely visible in order to get sales for that business. And it was interesting that as soon as I started to really claim my authority and get that business in the media,
Mhm.
that's when the business really grew and that's when the business took off. So when I sort of exited that business, I was talking to a friend and she said, "You're so good at getting your business in the media. You need to teach other entrepreneurs how to do that."
I love
So I
that.
ended up sort of stumbling into business number two through that lived in experience. But actually, that lived in experience had come far earlier as a 20-something-year-old in quite a challenging environment of mergers and acquisitions. So, yeah, I learned that skill kind of early on in my career, actually.
I love that story because I think all too often when I talk to my clients or members inside my community, it's like, well, what should my business be about, Brenda? And I'm like, well, what do you love doing? What are you known for? And then you even had somebody in your life tell you, hey, you're really good at doing this. Like you should monetize this. This should be your next business. And even when they said that to you, you're kind of like, yeah, okay. But I think that's the thing is sometimes it doesn't come naturally to think what our next business would be because that that skill that we have just comes naturally to us. We kind of take it for granted sometimes, like, hey, this is what I'm known for because I just do it so easily. But
A
that could be
hundred
a business in
percent.
itself. So I love that.
Yes, and very much also what's very interesting now is that when I first started this business, it was all
Mhm.
about getting your business in the media, right? Claiming your authority in the media. And whilst I still have that as a kind of foundational element of my business, I'm now talking more about helping experts become trusted thought leaders. And what's so interesting is that when I was a management consultant, I was always the kind of suited and booted consultant that was kind of coming in to make change. And if I really look at that, I realize I was the most distrusted person
Mm.
on the shop floor because when the
Yeah.
consultants come in, winter is coming, they're going to fire us. That was
Right. Yeah.
that you
Some
could
process is going to change the way we used to do
Oh,
it. Yeah.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. Whenever there was an acquisition,
Mhm.
people were going to lose their jobs. That was fundamentally, and I was there to
Right.
kind of implement whatever process systems, whatever we had to do. So you would literally, I mean, I remember seeing people just nosedive back into their cubicles whenever I was coming. And what was interesting is I suddenly realized as a 26-year-old, in that kind of environment, both as a female, as a woman of color, all
Sure.
those interesting factors. I had to build trust with those scared clients very quickly.
Hmm.
So I actually think my slight obsession with trust and becoming a trusted thought leader and what I call now a trusted icon actually emerged about 25 years ago, 20 years ago, by working in those chaotic, just,
Yeah.
distrustful
Well, and I would
environments.
also, and I also say like a fairly male dominated, like, well, not even fairly, it was a male dominated mergers, acquisitions, like the fact that you were a woman in your mid 20s doing that, like kudos
Yes,
to you, but that's pretty much unheard of back then, right? So there probably wasn't a
yes.
lot of colleagues, like female colleagues around you in that sort of scenario. So that even in itself, just to build credibility, trust that you're capable of doing the job that you had, that's pretty admirable. So let's fast forward to today. We're in this
Mm.
online space. You're an online business owner. I see you out there on Instagram. Your clients are out there in the online space and trying to get in front of those media outlets, those publicists, those podcast hosts. What are some of the things that you're seeing? Like you mentioned this trusted icon. How is that showing up, right? Just in general, that you're seeing sort of in the online space. Are we doing it right? Are we doing something
Yeah.
wrong?
That's a great question. So, what I'm seeing is that people who are brilliant experts are almost assuming that they're going to win clients just by
Mhm.
saying, "Hey, I'm an expert
Right.
at this." They're sort of waiting for the clients to come, sort of like field of dreams. Like if you build it, they will come. But actually, what's happened now is that we're very much in this, I call it this era of distrust, whereas other people have labeled it a trust recession. However you label it, there's definitely in the online space this sense of discernment from a
Mhm.
consumer perspective of who do I trust? Who do I really trust and invest in to help me with whatever service I'm looking at?
Right.
And I think the reason that's happened is because between 2019 and 2022, especially in the personal development industry, we saw a 54% increase in the number of online coaches in the US.
Mhm.
And that created, especially post pandemic, this sort of flood of newly qualified coaches. So people, especially in 2020, they started to, work from home. They were losing their jobs. They weren't sure. They were going through their own growth journeys. We're investing in coaches. And then what's happened now is people are like, actually, I invested in that coach and I didn't get a return on anything,
Yeah.
or they didn't meet my expectations. So we're definitely seeing now in 2024, a lot of people are saying, hang on a minute, like, why are my clients not coming to me? And so what I'm saying to those individuals is it's just not enough to be an expert. You need to be a trusted thought leader. People need to trust you. And in order
Mhm.
to be trusted, you need to intentionally lay down what I call trust markers, credibility markers, to
Okay.
demonstrate you are a credible expert in this sea of unqualified TikTok influencers,
Right.
that people are a little bit overwhelmed, confused, cautious of, and really attract your customers, your future clients that way.
I love like just sort of like as soon as you gave that snapshot of kind of like those 4 or 5 years of
Mm.
like you said the surge in the coaching industry, and you and I were even talking about it the other day, like someone asked me on a podcast recently like how long have you been coaching, because it's kind of like it's like a recent thing for a lot of people. And I call myself
Yes.
a coach just because I think that that is digestible, right? For a lot of people that come across my content or want to work with me in some capacity based on my offers. But the whole practice of coaching or developing people or developing business leaders, like I've been doing it, like as you talked about your corporate background, I've been in
Yes.
corporate since I was 21 years old, since I graduated from university. And right away, like in the first 3 months of being there, I was in a management position. And my boss trained me on how to be a manager, how to communicate with employees, like how to have a one-to-one meeting. And
Yes.
so this whole idea of coaching, like I've been doing it since I was 21 years old. They
Yes.
gave me a title, they gave me a manager title, right? And a team of people. And I actually had
Yeah.
to produce results with these people. And we don't even want to talk about that nowadays, right? Well, like people production. It's like, no, like when we have a group of people together, we need to actually achieve a goal, everyone. So it's just interesting to see how some of these, positions, these influencers have evolved. And I love this, like you talked about these markers. So like to build this sort of trust. What would be an example of, some of the things even that you've done in your business? Because, as a disruptive publicist, if a client was going to want to work with you, what are some of those markers that you've put in your business or you even suggest to your clients to do?
Yes, I love this question. Well, I always tell my clients to really demonstrate, their lived in experience of who they've actually worked with and who
Mhm.
their clients are, particularly where there's brand names and logos they can
Okay.
use. Because a logo is like a picture, and a picture speaks 1,000 words.
Right.
So for you and I, Brenda, we're quite similar with this corporate background.
Hmm.
And so actually mentioning the names, if you can, now that you're out of contract, if you can mention the names of your former clients it's impressive because to anyone who has a corporate background, we all know that we've worked in very structured hierarchical environments, especially as women, and therefore we've earned the respect, of those clients. And therefore demonstrating logos on your website is something I'm very passionate about. So yes, my clients get media very quickly, and so they put in as seen in, but actually the trick that I think a lot of former corporates are missing is actually mention your clients that you've worked on, all the kind of big deals, all the clients, statistics and numbers. I worked on a $469 million acquisition, and I mentioned that, it was Unilever. So if you go into one of my websites, you can see that my clients have been Sky, Unilever, right, Royal Bank of Scotland. So you see financial services experience, you see retail experience. It gives you a sense of who I am. And so I think, if you've got that rich background, how can you distill it into actual visible markers on your website? That's one of the things I teach people.
I love that. And then what about, the fact that maybe somebody has been in a publication, but maybe it was a while ago. Is that still okay? Like if you were published in Forbes or New York Times, like how far back do you, bring those things forward?
100% you should be demonstrating that is a credibility marker. If you've been featured in a publication, you've earned that right because you have been trusted by the media for your expertise. Right. And so when you put up that logo, you are aligning your personal brand, your name, with that media logo in that journalist who's backed you. So so many people get featured in the New York Times or Women's Health or Forbes, and then they're like, oh, whatever, And I'm like, no, like the first thing you should see when I go onto a website is as seen in. That's the first thing. Okay. And then the 4 or 5 logos at the top, and then the headshot of you pointing to whatever service that you offer. That is the initial impression we have of you, that you've been backed by those media outlets. And these days, it's not easy to get those into those features.
No,
It's extremely picky because they are also in this environment where they've seen a flood of unqualified or not well respected experts. So they're more discerning about who they put in their publications. So anytime you get featured anywhere, you should absolutely be shouting that from the rooftops because you've earned that right.
I need to update my website in January. Yeah, because I have spoken on LinkedIn stages. I've been in Wall Street Journal articles, Forbes articles, but yeah, I kind of just sort of take it for granted. And those are also times where I didn't even pitch people. People pitched me from those organizations and said, hey, we're doing an article on this and we want to have you featured. You're going to be one of 5 people that we're interviewing. We want to mention you. And I'm like, okay, sure. But yeah, kind of taking that for granted.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that you've taken that for granted because someone new to your world who's never met you comes onto a website. You don't want them to bounce off. You immediately want them to see that you've been featured in the Wall Street Journal, that you spoke for LinkedIn on stages. That is an amazing, amazing credibility marker. So, what I encourage to anyone listening today, go and do an audit on the above the fold section of your website. Doing it. Where are their credibility markers? And if you're a little bit too close to your content, get someone else to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's also just a message too, I find for my clients that are mostly midlife women entrepreneurs, is that at midlife, we have accomplished so much. And sometimes we just, number one, we forget because there has been so many accomplishments depending on where you are at in your career. But I'm just going to say, if you're somewhere in your 40s, 50s, 60s, you've done a lot. So whether or not, you're a CEO of a former corporate organization, now you're on your own as a solopreneur, it doesn't really matter about the position. You could still be like a manager in a corporate organization, still doing lots of things. I'm thinking about awards or recognition, those type of things. Like I was top manager of the year for 5 years in a row or something, or top people developer in this company for 6 years in a row. Like get that information out there. Like it shows to your credibility.
100%. When I promote my program, Trusted Icon, if you go to trustedicon.com, you'll see that above the fold, you'll see the logos. You can all go to my website and you'll see the logos as an example. But actually, it says that the program's hosted by my name, Adela Hussain. Then in brackets, it says Cosmopolitan Finalist of the Year Award 2017, because I was selected as one of top 10 female founders in the UK, and had to go through a panel for that opportunity. I mean, that kind of
Yeah,
accolade.
you were selected in a group of your peers. See, for me, I would just, and maybe there's some people that are listening today going 2017, oh, that was years ago, so it's outdated, it's not relevant anymore, things have changed. Like
Yeah.
that's how I sort of think about it. No one's going to care about something from 2009 or whatever, but it's the path that got you where you are today that has developed this expertise. It's like not like you just wake up today, open a business, and you're an expert. It's everything that you've accumulated all in this leadership, business journey, expertise journey that you've been going from zero to now. And
100%. I think a lot of people, when they start a business, they somehow experience a little bit of amnesia and they forget the
yes,
last 20 years of experience. And they think they're starting from a blank canvas.
yeah,
And to be really blunt to these individuals, I'm going to give you a little bit of harsh advice here, but
please.
you are competing against these 20-something-year-old TikTok influencers
That are pointing
who
and
are doing
dancing.
this ridiculous pointing, jigging kind of, buy my service. And people are falling for it. They're like,
Mhm.
she looks like me, she sounds like me. There's absolutely no experience other than that woman, I'm not putting her down, but her confidence is winning her sales, not her experience at that
Yes,
age, right? Because that's all she can rely on, because she hasn't got those years of experience.
right.
So if you're going to put a woman who is 40 something next to a 20 something or a TikTok influencer, what does a 40-year-old have over the 20-year-old? She has got proper, credible, qualified experience. Any client, most of my, all my clients are, 40 plus. So I tell all my clients, where are your qualifications? Where is your experience? And I won't actually take anyone on unless they have that, because I know when I work with journalists, they don't want a 20-something-year-old TikTok influencer. They want someone who's got a psychology degree or a
Yeah.
medical degree or a,
And can back up the
they,
facts and can back up the facts and
yes,
because otherwise they get, it's all about their credibility. They're putting their name beside your work.
100%.
And now anyone can write stuff. We know that in the media, right? We know that like as far as how things are being reported, it's like anyone can put a video up there and it's credible because it's just out there versus we used to watch the 6 o'clock news, right? Hovered around the TV as a family or whatever.
Yes,
And that was our credible source. But now it's like everybody's credible source is just coming from an iPhone. So
yes.
I think the reality is that the people that are out there doing the publicity in the media, it's their name, it's their brand when they are representing you in that article or in that podcast or TV spot.
Percent. And this is why when I work with my clients, it's all
Mhm.
about prestigious media. So it's not just helping you pitch an opportunity where you are a
Right.
contributor and writing an article for a publication no one's ever heard of. You're actually getting in front of a world-class journalist, and we're trying to get you featured in the BBC or in the Telegraph or the Times or Women's Health.
Mhm.
And that has weight in itself, and not everyone has those credibility markers on their site, because it is hard to get in front of those journalists, because the journalists are picky about who they want to align their work, their name with. Absolutely, people need to rave about that when they've got those opportunities as well. It's the first thing we should see on your site.
So I know this is going to be a great podcast just right off the bat. This is a side note, but everyone listening to it, because when I'm also learning something as the host on the podcast, when I'm
Yes,
interviewing a guest and I'm taking something away, like I'm literally going to take away some of these tips. And I want to encourage everyone that's listening to go back and do that, especially
yes.
as midlife women too, because we don't always acknowledge our accomplishments, our achievements. We don't actually appreciate all the things that we've learned and we've developed this expertise in. And like you said earlier, we think that we need to be starting our business today with a blank canvas. And it's like, no, no. It's so full and it's so rich. Like populate that canvas and then pull out the gems that you think are going to be important for that other person to hear from you on. So there's lots of nuggets that I'm hearing from you in this area. What's something that is not like when you think about this sort of trusted icon that we should really sort of stay away from, that's going to like detract or make it difficult for you to be established as that trusted icon?
Oh, I love this. This is a great
Like
question.
your gem. Like don't do.
Yeah. So we're going to get a bit nerdy here. One of the things I teach my clients is something called the trust equation. It was an
Okay.
equation that was developed by a consultant called Charles H. Green. And if we really delve into the definition of trust, what he's put forward this equation, which is trustworthiness is equal to credibility plus intimacy plus reliability over self-orientation. So if you remember fractions a little bit from school, if the bottom number is too big, that means that, what you equate, the solution is it starts to reduce. So what we're saying is trust will go down if the self-orientation is too high. So that means self-orientation is when you talk about yourself all the time. So so let's take a practical example. If you go onto my Instagram grid, and my whole Instagram grid is all about me and my life and everything I do that day. There are people who do this, but they're clever, right? If it's all self-orientated and there's nothing about how I help people or how I serve people or what I'm offering or what my mission is, or the end transformation that I'm giving as a consultant or a coach, if it's just all about me, it starts to go down. Right. Because people think, oh, she's just talking about herself all day. Like, what is she actually selling? Like, what is she actually offering? Like, how can she help me if she's talking about herself all day? So that's what self-orientation is. So if you talk about yourself all the time and you're very ego-led, I call it the ego,
right?
It can end up detracting people from your work. So what I teach my clients is lead with the story and not your ego. Okay. Which they all love. So whenever you're pitching for opportunities or trying to make yourself visible, it should lead with a story. What's happening in the world today that you can support or help with? So if you were a leadership coach, for example, supporting people on conflict. So when I mean conflicts, I talk about like work conflict, so like tension at work, bad relationships at work, bad bosses, something like that. When you're putting your work out there on social media, you want to talk about the stories. Have you had a personal story where you've not got on with your boss? Have you got clients who are, there's situations, scenarios where people are, coming to you and saying, can you help me on, I've got a really tricky team that I'm managing right now. Like every time I give an instruction to my team, they don't respect me, or they're not listening to me. I don't feel heard at work. So if there are those conflicts, you should take those conflict stories out and lead with that rather than talking about buy my conflict package, or here's what I ate at work today, here's my brunch, here's my avocado and toast. It's always got to be about the stories because we relate to each other with stories. That's how we find the gold in one another, and that's how we create the connection and the intimacy.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that because I think even the other day we were talking about, I often see people getting online and they're talking about, buy my package, buy my offer, buy my, 12 weeks to this, which is fine. Cause I also think on the other extreme, like I see a lot of women entrepreneurs that don't talk about their offers, right? So I'm like, okay, at least you're talking about it. Great. Like get it out there. But I think this whole piece about talking about yourself, I think in the case of like stories, that's the distinction between, buy my 12-week X package, because then you're going to have an amazing life like I have. I think in that, like when you were talking earlier about like, I want to kind of connect that thread in about like this surge in the coaching industry over the last like 5-6 years, people I think bought into that, seeing like, oh, this life, right? And then comparing their life to this other person on the internet going, okay, they have it better than me because their car is just a little bit better, or their house is a little bit larger, or their grass is a little greener. And so I've got to buy their package to get this. Versus we have no idea behind the scenes how this person is living their life. We don't even know if they have a profitable business, right? They could be
100%.
But like, running a negative, profitable business and like spending it just as much as they make. So we have no idea anything, to say that this offer is actually going to get you that life, or what life they had before they even started selling that offer. There's all this sort of, whether it's privilege or education or, we can go into lots of things around diversity from that standpoint. But I think what you're saying to me is, I've developed this offer for you based off of my expertise. And not just because I've read a bunch of books on it or taken a bunch of certifications, but I've actually done this work myself.
Yes.
And this is what's
Yes.
resulted. And then here's also some of my clients that have done this work or have done this work and had challenges doing the work. Like sometimes it doesn't always work, and this is why it might not work for you. Like being
Yes.
really authentic and genuine about that transformation.
Yes, because it's where so when I was speaking to a journalist yesterday, Brenda, we're in this era of not just distrust, but it's actually spun out a wellness trend. So one of the biggest wellness trends coming to us in 2025 is called de-influencing, which is interesting, right? So, and what de-influencing means is that people who was previously trying to influence you and now trying to show the rawness behind the story to say, I'm not, trying to influence you to kind of lead this aspirational life. I'm going to de-influence you by actually showing you the rawness and the authenticity of behind the scenes. So it's actually got this label called de-influencing. So in the way that we're seeing this on social media now, is you're seeing influencers now without makeup on. They might show you images of their messy kitchen or their messy house, instead of everything being very perfect and curated. And we're definitely seeing this in the online industry now, where if a business coach or consultant is saying, like, as well as buy my package and here's what I have to offer, they will show raw behind the scenes of what it takes to grow that business and the vulnerability that they're facing that week. And so I think, we are in this era where we're not just trying to build trust, but we know that our future clients are more discerning, and we know
Right.
they're critical thinkers, and they're not believing those fake, those highly curated images, whether they are authentic or not. People are just more savvy these days, and they want to see the
Yeah,
real you.
it's funny though when you talk about like behind the scenes. Like I think I've always been that way. I'm always like
Yes.
not wearing makeup. I'm always like, I'm wearing sweatpants right now. Like I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, like even right now, if anyone, it's like, here you go. There's the mess behind my like office.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you're sharing that. But if we even, loop it back to the original trust equation, like we talked about what detracts from, what reduces trust being too ego-led, right? And
Right. Yeah.
self-orientation. But on the reverse, to increase trust on the left-hand side, there's intimacy, credibility, and reliability. So
Mhm.
intimacy, telling vulnerable stories with your voice and sharing the challenges along the way, that creates intimacy. So
Yes.
as soon as you start to be more open and vulnerable and intimate with your audience, that's when they start to say, oh, and trust suddenly zooms up in the
Starts to go
equation.
up. Yeah.
So, the beautiful thing about this equation is it's a balance, right?
Mhm.
You can't just be trauma dumping on your audience every week. If you're overly intimate, there's a lot of trust, but actually you want a balance. You want a balance between your expertise. So we call that credibility. So
Mhm.
that's where I really hone in on my thought lead and say, okay, credibility. What actually is credibility, right? These are the credibility markers. This is using your voice. This is sharing your expertise. But having a balance in the equation between the intimate stories, the
Yes.
hardcore expertise that you have, and the reliability. Reliability is so important. There's a lot of coaches out there who show up once in a blue moon. They're never consistent, and they're ping-ponging between what they're putting out there. Do they say what they say they do? That's
So,
fundamentally
yeah,
what
you talk
reliability
about
is.
reliability, but I'll often say consistency. So I like
Yes.
reliability is better because I think some people, and again, for people that are starting their business now, they're thinking consistency is like, oh, I have to be posting 3 times a day and I need to be
Yeah.
doing a reel mixed with a carousel, and they get into this whole like, it's too formulaic. I can't do it. It doesn't fit with my lifestyle. And so then they're out, right? But I think what you're saying is reliability in the sense of you've got a consistent message, it's repeatable, and people are, again, figuring out what you're known for, what they can count on you for. You
And,
give the intimate story and the examples through your own personal life experiences or business experiences or wellness,
but it's
genre.
also the client transformation, right? So
Yeah, the client.
whatever
Yeah.
you promise to deliver
Hmm.
to your clients, are you delivering that? So that's when I talk about what I love to hone in on with my clients is, where are the client wins? Where are the case studies? Where are the testimonials?
Yes.
Are you regularly sharing that? So every time we get a media win from my clients,
Hmm.
that goes straight on my grid. I tag them, we tag the journalist, we show evidence of that 6-page feature. And it's, if even, like 3 weeks ago, we had some of my clients in a call with a journalist, and we had 30 media commissions. So that's a huge number in the space of 2 hours. So
Hmm.
immediately that went as an Instagram post. Like, look, guys, we've just nailed these media commissions. They're going to come down. You're going to see them in 3 months' time, but we're telling you now this is a win and we're celebrating it. And that in itself is to kind of demonstrate to people that we don't just talk about an offer or here's my package, we actually get the results. Because this is it. There's too many people in the industry are not getting results for anybody. So if you get regular, if you are reliable and you are demonstrating that you are getting wins and results for your clients,
Hmm.
absolutely, that is another credibility marker. Tell people about it, because so many people aren't doing that. So many people are maybe leaning the other way and telling too many vulnerable stories, and just
Hmm.
there's too much copy and marketing and messaging. And it's like, well, where are the wins?
Yeah.
Where's the results?
And you have them, and sometimes, when I talk to clients, like, where are they? It's like, oh, I didn't want to ask, I don't know if they would want to say something. And I'm like, well, just ask at least, and even if it's anonymous or whatever, but just ask and you'd be surprised. And I also do think that when people do get those transformations, they are more likely to want to say thank you to you for doing that. So ask your
Yeah.
clients for those. I think that's
Well, you should
that's
also
important.
ask your clients, not just by asking your clients, but just replaying back to your clients.
Mm,
This is the win that we've achieved with you,
hmm.
together inside this container.
Right.
Are you aware of that win? Because, going back to the midlife woman who has maybe achieved all her wins previously in a corporate environment, in a team, things might be a little bit easier in a team. And she's gone out and achieved that win
As a solopreneur.
as
Yeah.
a solopreneur in a
Hmm.
competitive environment. That is something to be celebrated. So when you reach out to your clients, it's symbiotic. You're not just asking them for a testimonial to help you out. You're
Hmm.
actually reinforcing to them their win and playing back to them and making sure it actually lands in their head. This is the win that you achieved. Are you aware of that? Like, how are you feeling about that? We need to celebrate that. We need to honor that. So there's a way that you structure that so it becomes celebratory rather than promotional. And when you do that in a celebratory way, it's a win-win for both of you,
For
which
sure.
which
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So where can people learn more about this framework, this trusted icon?
yes, I have a program called
Hmm.
Trusted Icon,
Perfect.
and it's very much designed to help kind of hidden experts become more intentional thought leaders and the practical strategies they need to do.
Okay.
So to find out more about that, people can go to trustedicon.com,
Hmm.
and that's a great starting point. The other thing to mention is that I've actually got a lovely guide to pitching, because one of the things I see, Brenda, is a lot of women, midlife women who are starting businesses. They have so much experience, there's so much expertise, and they're
Hmm.
not getting it visible. They're not getting it out there and putting themselves for opportunities. So we have an amazing guide on how to pitch called Pitch Rockstar. So
Nice.
people go to pitchtopress.com/pitch rockstar 2024. Yeah, you can
We'll
put the
have the
link.
link. Don't worry. The link will be in the captions. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a treat for them. They can get $100 off just using a coupon code Brenda Rocks. So that will help them if they want to get started with, I deserve to be on that panel. I'm done with these 20-something-year-old TikTok influencers. But the question that comes up is, how do I pitch? How do I pitch for that podcast? How do I pitch for that panel opportunity? How do I pitch for journalists?
Hmm.
So there's a lovely guide there about how to structure pitches with examples and emails and case studies and, all the things you need to know for that.
Excellent. Okay. So we'll make sure we have that link in the show notes, and then people can make use of the coupon Brenda Rocks and
Yes.
start pitching and start like lining up for 2025, which I think is amazing. Or take the rest of December off when this comes out and start your new year off on the right, with the right strategy to get your voice out there, your messaging out there. And I think take some of these points that Adela's talked about as far as the intimacy, the reliability, the credibility, and really making sure it's not about posting again 20 posts a day type of thing, or
Yes.
sending out the same sort of Canva template documents all the time, but it's really about the messaging, the stories that you want your audience to know you for. So I think that those are some important messages that you've shared with us today. Adela, do you mind if I
100%.
just ask you a couple of questions about your own business?
Yes, of course. Go for
Because
it.
we're talking to an entrepreneur, and so it's always about kind of going behind the scenes. So
Yes.
we are approaching this podcast will be coming out in early December, and so we are approaching the new year. What's a challenge or a goal that you've got in sight for your business in 2025?
A challenge or a goal I've
Mhm.
got? Good question. I would say a goal I have for my business is
Mhm.
something that I was advised to do by someone on my email list that I never did about 4 years ago, which is start my own podcast.
Okay.
And it's interesting because 4 years ago someone said, "Oh, you're so good on interviews. You should start your own podcast." And actually, back then, about 3 years ago, I listened to it and I said, "Okay, I'm going to do summits instead." So I ended up recording the equivalent of like 4 podcast seasons in the form of summits. But they never, I haven't even, all those interviews I could actually translate into podcast
Yeah, you
episodes.
could.
So there's a way through it, right? But I wish I had started my own podcast 4 years ago. So I think the advice, if someone wanted to take a bit of advice on that, listen to your audience when they give you some good ideas.
Well, yeah, because they're saying that they actually want more of you and, in other forms. So that's cool that you're going to
Yes.
be launching your podcast. Well, so that was going to be my next question, but maybe it's not from your email list or your subscribers, but what's been a piece of advice that you've gotten, say, from a coach or a mentor around your business that you put in place and you're still using today?
Yes, it's a piece of advice that I was given from my very first business. I use it, I tell everyone now as well who I
Mhm.
work with, is to claim your authority from day one of your business.
Mhm.
Claim your authority. Because the biggest mistake I see experts and entrepreneurs and founders make is that they
Mhm.
start their business and then they say, okay, when I'm ready, or when I'm perfect, or when
Mhm.
my website's perfect, that's when I'll put myself forwards for to the media. I'll go and talk to a journalist, or I'll
Right.
go and put myself forwards for a panel or a speaking engagement or a podcast. And that day never comes because they end up just using that as an excuse. And it's almost what I see is people are almost in like the Usual Suspects film lineup, where they're sort of all lined up waiting for someone to tap them on the shoulder and say, you are now ready to be promoted and
Right.
go and be, talking about that in the media or talking about that on television.
Mhm.
Whereas in actual fact, the people who get those opportunities are the people who have given themselves the permission.
Right.
They are no better qualified than you and I. They really aren't, in your niche.
Mhm.
They are just the person who just raised their hands.
Who asked? Yeah.
So if someone's listening and they're thinking, they're reading an article about their niche and they think, oh, I could do a better job than that. Why are they talking about that?
Get
That's
out there.
that's a whisper from the universe for you
Right.
to stop hiding and claim your authority. Claim your authority. The minute you claim your authority, that's when clients will come to you and you'll get more sales, you'll get more recognition, you'll make more impact because you're just reaching pools of new audiences that you haven't reached out to before.
Yeah, I love that. Such great advice that someone has given you and that you're using, and now you're even paying forward to your clients and your business, which is amazing. One last question for you before we sign
Yeah.
off. If I was to give you a billboard and you could put anything on it, and it could be anywhere in the world, what would it say and where would you put it?
Oh, that's a really good question. If I could say, is this a sort of mantra or is this some sort of just anything on the
Anything.
billboard?
I mean, it could be something that you say to yourself that you always remember, or something that you say to your
Well,
child or your
okay.
client. Like, but it's just like it could be anywhere in the world, but it's obviously a message you want others to hear.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's a good question actually. So, I mean, I was asked not to put it on a billboard, but I have personalized spectacles. So I
Oh,
went to a very sweet little, it looks like a shop from Dickens, you know, it's this kind of that they hand make glasses. So fun fact, if any of you follow Stanley Tucci, the
oh,
actor,
yes.
the reason he looks so sexy, or if you think he looks sexy, or quite if he looks good now, is because those glasses. And those
Okay.
glasses are made from the same place that I got my glasses from. But I think he looks better on his than I do in mine. But anyway, the point is that when I had these personalized glasses, spectacles made, they said, oh, you can put something on the side of your glasses that you can look at every
Oh,
day. So it's
nice.
the same question, but on something they use every day. And I put the Latin phrase carpe diem. So
Hmm.
seize the day. It's a little bit cliched, right? Seize the day. But I
Get both
think
society.
so many of us don't, right?
Right.
So many of us are waiting for opportunity. Whereas if you just seize the day, and it's not necessarily you seize the day, but what I really mean is just stop waiting, right? Just
Hmm.
seize it.
Start
So
now.
start
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't wait. That's what it is. You know, the
I love
longer
it.
you wait, the older you get, and then you'll be too old to kind of enjoy that opportunity. You know, one of my most inspiring clients is, I think, I never quite asked her age, but she's definitely in her late 60s, potentially early 70s. And
Hmm.
she is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Her clients, the United Nations, Procter and Gamble. She's always on a plane. She's a tiny lady, but
Right.
she is making so much impact. You know, she has a full team that she pays well. She's doing 3 or 4 speaking engagements every week, and these are, you know, prestigious clients.
Right.
She's carpe diem. She's just living it and breathing it. So you're never too
What an
old.
amazing icon right there to like aspire to be in your 60s.
Yeah. Yeah, and she has become iconic. She's become iconic with my journalists. She's getting like media features like every week
That's
because
amazing.
she's almost like she just doesn't care anymore. You know, she's got thoughts and she's ready to be a thought leader. Well, she is a thought leader. She's just putting the thoughts out there and getting featured.
Amazing.
Why wait? So
Yeah. So
use her
start,
as an
yeah.
inspiration.
Yeah, use her as an inspiration. Use you as an inspiration today and the messages that you share with people. Start
Yes.
now. There are 8 billion people on the planet. I always say that someone needs what you've got. So get it out there. You'll
Yes.
help somebody else out today. And I think also as women entrepreneurs, that's typically what we do, right? When we get access to money, when we get access to doing the things that we want to do for our life, we actually give back more to our community, give back more to other people. It's a fact.
100%. A
So,
100%. And when
yeah.
you are a thought leader and you are putting your thoughts out there in the media, the other thing you are paying back into society, because there will be people who can't afford your services, but when they read your expertise or your story in an 6-page article, you are making your work accessible to
Oh,
people. And
absolutely.
that
Yeah.
is a beautiful thing to do to impact
Mhm.
more people. So you might get future clients from it. People often do, but you'll also reach people who need to read that very day for, you know, because they can't necessarily afford to work with you one-on-one. So it's an amazing thing when you do that. And yeah, you'll invite more good back into your world.
That's a great note, right? Just to end there on. Adela, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and sharing all your wisdom and brilliance with us. And we'll make sure that people get access to the link that you provided so they can either get the pitch document or check out the Trusted Icon program that you offer. Thanks so much for being here today. Thanks everyone for listening. Take care.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Absolutely. Okay.